Hi, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining us at Navigating Leadership Realities. I'm Colleen Lewis of Maverick Trailblazing, and my co-host is Jamie Davidoff, Spark Success. Say hello, Jamie.
Hi, everybody.
The topic we'll be exploring in this segment today is creating momentum through building trust. We'll be covering what's meant by this topic and what's important about, building that trust and creating momentum, and some tips and some ideas about how to create trust in your relationships. Jamie, when you think about creating momentum and building trust in relationships, what comes to mind?
Well, that's a good question, Colleen. So to me, trust is the foundation of relationships, any type of relationship, whether it's at home, in our life, outside of home, or at work, in teams and groups and one-on-one relationships. And without that trust, it's really difficult for us to create momentum because people are second guessing, they're not sharing, that type of thing, in a nutshell. So how about you? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Jamie, that it's so important to have a foundation of trust in really building authentic, um, really powerful relationships, and not only, on an individual level, but, when you're looking at an organizational level of being able to build that with the teams and the individuals that you're working with. And boy, I tell you, when you can do that, boy, do you get some high performing relationships taking place because people can be honest and succinct, and you really, really get down to the core of creating, some problem solving and good relationships taking place.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned the high performing teams. As you know, Google was involved in some research, and it was called Project Aristotle. And Amy Edmondson from Harvard actually studied what was it that distinguished high performing teams at Google from other teams. And what she found was surprising to everybody involved, which was there was this sense of psychological safety. So each of these teams operated differently. Some of them might have been more technical, some of them might have been more, focused on the relationship side, but or conceptual side of the business or operations. But what the high performing teams had in common was that psychological safety, of which trust is, a key component. Very, very important.
Yeah, when we think about psychological safety, we talk a lot about physical safety in buildings, and we see that with security and things like that. But, when you're looking at that psychological aspect of having safety, it's, individuals can feel that who they are as an individual and how they think and how they feel um, won't be negatively impacted, and that's not going to be under threat in any way, shape, or form for them.
Right. And we know as coaches, right, that when people are feeling like they can't share their ideas or because they're in fear of judgment, and it might be their own judgment actually sometimes, if there's not an environment where that's normalized, there's a lot of great ideas that don't get shared that could really benefit the person, the team, and the organization.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. There's very little risk taking. So it's creating that environment where it's, welcomed.
It is. And it occurs to me as we're in this, time where people are working virtually, trust can be harder to build because we can't read body language to the same degree. We're not together, so to speak. And so it's so important to be aware of what trust is, what it looks like, and have some tools to remember the different components that create trust. So I'm going to pull up this model from the book Conversational Intelligence by Judith Glaser, which is on the screen here. And this is one of the models she shares. And Colleen, I know you're trained in her work as well. So the key heading here is that trust changes our reality. And you'll notice on this chart at the bottom, it's moving from I to the right to we. And on the left side is what's called level 1 conversations. In the middle, that's more what you would call level 2 conversations. And then on the right, the experimenter co-creator, are level 3 conversations. And it's when we can have those level 3 conversations based on trust that we can really become that high performing team, whether we're in person or virtual. On the left side, where we're using the level 1 conversations, that creates resistance and skepticism. People tend to be in fear, and we see that term amygdala hijack, right? Which is when we're in fear, the fight, flight, or freeze. And actually, you know, from a neuroscience perspective, that when we're in fear, we've got cortisol running through our brains and our bodies, right? Which are telling us to protect ourselves. But on the other side of the chart here, with the experimenter co-creator and the level 3 conversations, you can see that our prefrontal cortex of our brain is engaged, and we have oxytocin, which is that, you know, makes us feel open and engaged and creative. So it takes us out of our amygdala into our prefrontal cortex, where we can use our reasoning skills and whatnot. And I'm noticing, you know, at the bottom there, Colleen, that there's a really big component of this, which is listening. What does that mean?
Absolutely, Jamie. So with conversational intelligence, you know, we're talking about conversation, and it's more than just being dialogic. It's about the listening component. And that's why that's at the bottom of this chart, because that's the foundation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Starting to establish and build trust in relationships. Because when we can listen without judgment and worrying about what that next response is going to be, but listening on that deeper level of what an individual might be communicating to us, and thinking about, you know, is there honesty in the conversation? You know, can they talk with an open heart? You know, are they able to reveal more to you because they feel that level of trust? You know, and as you said, Jamie, it can be different when we're doing this virtually because we're not physically present in the same room with someone. However, if we take the time to listen deeply, you know, and have compassion and have empathy, empathy is so important in our communications, and move from looking at it as being eye-centric for you as the listener to thinking about it as being, how can we co-create in this conversation, and whatever problem we might be able to solve or issue we may need to be addressing, so that it's a co-creation and a collaboration where we are doing it. What comes to mind for you about listening, Jamie?
Well, listening creates this space for people to feel heard, respected, and like you said, if we're using empathy and non-judgment, which to me is part of empathy, then we know that our perspective has been heard, and there's no automatic thinking or negative thinking going on with the listener. Like, the listener is truly open to hearing and kind of being an empty slate for that person to be able to project their perspective on. And you know, the word here, phrase at the bottom, different mindsets. We go on the left from having a closed mindset. We're closed, we're protecting ourselves, you know, we have blinders on, to the right-hand side, where we have an open mindset, or another way of saying that is a growth mindset, where we're curious, we're looking to learn, we're looking to understand, so that we can together come up with a solution that's going to work for the two of us, or if it's a team, for the team. Doesn't mean we have to agree with everything, It just means that we have taken everything into consideration to come up with a solution. Without that, we can't come up with a solution where there's going to be buy-in, engagement, and productivity.
Mm-hmm.
So I noticed there's this distrust and trust. So distrust on the one side, trust on the other, and there's an acronym of reality. Maybe I'll go through the distrust side. So distrust is when we see reality through threats and fear and we close down. So R is for we reveal less. We're not speaking up a lot. At least we're not, we might be speaking up and joking around and that kind of thing, deflecting what's really going on with us, but we're not really revealing what our thoughts and feelings are. We expect negative things like mistakes, assume the worst, look with caution, interpret with fear, which happen. We do interpret things with fear when we don't have all the information. And then we tell secrets. You know, this is like the back channeling after a meeting where people are talking about, wow, we really are going to be doing this, and kind of undermining what was agreed to. And then we get yes people. Yeah. People are complying, or at least saying they're going to comply. But, you know, that doesn't really create a lot of momentum for the team or the organization. Would you tell us about the trust side of the equation here?
Love to. So when we think about trust, and we've got more of that growth mindset or that open-mindedness that you spoke of, Jamie, we can have more security and be more willing to share, you reveal more, and really engage in a conversation with an individual and engage in that relationship more. You know, then we'll be able to have less expectations in different work type situations or areas that we may have promised and be able to follow through more fully and completely. We'll also assume the best in others, right? We'll develop that trust and not be so concerned about, you know, how is this person gonna, you know, what are they going to do to take advantage of me? Instead, it's that open-mindedness that you're going to be partnering and co-creating with that individuals. And then you can look at situations more with an open heart and an open mind, so that you're able to really see a wider perspective of situations and of other individuals. And then we can interpret communications through facts and truth instead of assumptions, which is so important because our assumptions are usually wrong. There's that willingness and that ability to be able to tell the truth, you know, to be able to speak truth to power, so to say. And that yes, people are able to actually confront the truth instead of just being compliant and going along with the flow in the group. Yeah.
So powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jamie, we've got a great model to share with the audience today about how to build those trust in relationships, right?
Absolutely.
You know, so we talked about some of the concepts of what trust is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we're looking at building trust and we follow this acronym, right? So, you know, we can look at having transparency in the communication and in the listening, right? And
Mm-hmm.
being able to be authentic at the same time, right? Because sometimes as a leader, you know, you can't always tell people everything. And that's just in the interest of confidence sometimes, right? Or maybe a company is not ready to release certain information. And it's just saying, look, I can't tell you this right now, but what I can tell you is this. And when we know information, we'll give you more information, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's about building those relationships. Again, you know, we looked at that foundation of listening to connect to that other individual and having that empathy and that compassion in those conversations, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, listening to understand what is it that this person is saying to me being said in this conversation. You know, that person holding back, Think about, being curious. Why might they be holding back? What can I do to make this individual feel supported? And then, looking at that shared success, co-creating those strategies with individuals, so that you can be mutually successful as an individual, as a team, and as an organization. And then finally, looking at the truth, looking at where are those assumptions, what are the facts, what are the situation that's taking place. Jamie, what are your thoughts about this model?
Mm-hmm. I love this model because having the acronym of trust and these kind of quick components of trust to refer to can really help people remember when they're working on their skills, right? The skills are not like, we don't learn them as an all or nothing. As you think about applying some of these things, it could take quite a bit of courage, actually, if we're not used to it. And so if we can have this model in front of us, we're on computers now when we're in conversations or on our phone, but usually we can access, if you could even like write this down, transparency, relationship, understanding, shared success, and truth, it can be a great reminder and something that's easy to recall for people. And I just, it reminds me to encourage people to just take this one step at a time and slowly move from, wherever they are. I'm going to go back to that model. This model can be used to look at, well, where am I in, if you think about a particular relationship where you want to move from I to we, you can look at this and go, well, where do I think we're at right now with our relationship? Are we at, a wait and see? And if I want to impact that relationship to move it to more of the we side, some of these I'm going to go back to the other slide. We can look at what of these things could we be doing more of? And just pick one or two and try it out, and with each new conversation. So I love this model. Again, from the same book. How about you? Anything to add, Colleen?
That's a great way of looking at it, of taking that time to practice, because it does take practice. For myself, I'd like to say I've been studying communication, right? And particularly listening, especially as a coach, right? Because we really have to double down on those listening skills. And I'm still learning, even after all these years, right? So don't expect to get it right overnight. It takes time and it takes practice, but you can do it.
Yes, you can do it, and it's so worthwhile. And this is why it's worthwhile, right? It's the foundation of building momentum for your team. And even though we're in a strange time right now, we can still build momentum. And it's gonna require us to be more conscious about building trust in that virtual environment. By doing that, you provide psychological safety to share ideas, collaborate, and co-create, which is really important as we're navigating uncertainty. We need to co-create new solutions that we've possibly never used or thought of before. And as we briefly showed, the model, that kind of dashboard model that we looked at, can be used to identify where the trust level is at with your team or project group or personal relationship, and then gives you an idea about how you can move towards the we. And Colleen, I'm noticing this term we IQ. Would you explain that?
Absolutely. So this is a term that was coined by Judith Glazier of We Institute. So there you go, right? And it's really about an individually centric concept, right? Of the me focus, and building that culture of more we-centered, where we are co-creators together and we build those relationships on mutually respectful and trust through those communications that we have with one another. So, I mean, really, one of the things that I loved that Judith said is that when it comes to conversation, right? Just grabbing the quote here, pull it up. To get to the next level of greatness depends on the quality of the culture, which depends on the quality of the relationships, which depends on the quality of the conversation. Everything happens through conversations. And to me, that summarizes it beautifully.
That's a wonderful quote. Thank you for sharing that. So true. So we just want to wrap up by sharing with you that we are still having our complimentary live leadership group conversation forums. We're using Zoom for that. And it's at noon to 12:30 Mountain Daylight Time. And, you know, that's the official time. Sometimes we do stay on a little bit longer, depending on, you know, if it's needed or not or desired. But, you know, that is the core time frame. If you're interested, email us and we'll provide you with a Zoom link and password. As you may know, Zoom is now, you know, tightening up in security, which is great because we know that our webinars are protected. They're not recorded. The purpose for that is that we want people to feel that level of trust and that we can together co-create through our conversations new solutions forward based on what people are working towards with their teams. So our email is navleadershiprealities@gmail.com. And to listen to this and other videos, we're on YouTube at Navigating Leadership Realities. Anything to add, Colleen?
Yeah, I just wanted to add in, Jamie, if anyone's interested in learning more about conversational intelligence and these two models that we've shown here today with you, the reality model and the trust model, feel free to reach out and connect with Jamie or myself at the email address that she's given to you today, and we'd be more than happy to have a conversation with you.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Well, we'll sign off for today and we'll be back with another topic next week. Take care.
Bye.